Use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, Jones up with caffeine as I get ready to talk to one of my best friends and my partner in time, Jesse Jackson.
Well, thank you, Charles. I am excited to be spending another day talking the world of Doctor Who with you. We've got a good one to talk about today.
Yes. This is actually one of my favorite Torchwood episodes. Probably my favorite single Torchwood episode, as I talked about last time. And I'm looking forward to talking about this with you. It's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang here.
Not the Val Kilmer movie. I promise.
Not the Val
you
Kilmer movie.
Joke.
Right, which is fair. Yeah, that was a 2005 movie, which starred Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer. But the title was actually taken from what the European and the Asian media called James Bond back in the 60s. It's kind of like a little nickname, Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, and it actually ended up, that title, or that description, that nickname, actually ended up as one of the track titles in the soundtrack for Thunderball by John Barry.
Very nice.
A little bit of trivia, but yeah, so there's a serious James Bond connection here.
No other podcast gives you that kind of data.
Seriously, it's almost like we do a James Bond podcast here. There's so many connections between Doctor Who and its related universes with James Bond. It's going to be interesting. But it makes sense because there's so many British actors.
Well, and I also think of Russell T Davies talking about there was a special, I think it was right before Matt Smith was going to take over. I'm not sure, but BBC America or BBC did a special, and I believe it was Russell T Davies talked about that. You know how we watch James Bond and we just pretend it's the same person, right, even though different actors. He goes, Doctor Who actually embraces that. Right. And shows. And I always thought that was a really interesting. So there is a connection.
And obviously because the Doctor is an alien as opposed to a regular human being.
Or maybe
that
James Bond is. I'm just saying.
You think he's a Time Lord. Well,
That's right.
Well, you would think his sports cars would do more than just go underwater or, rocket through the air than, maybe travel through time. That was just saying.
Well, John Jones' sports car does that. Shout out to Supergirl.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's a very obscure Supergirl reference. Yes. All right, very good. We're going to talk about here in episode 113 of Next Stop Everywhere. We're going to talk about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Now, this is the third in our series of 4 Torchwood episodes, written by Chris Chibnall, our little mini retrospective. So if you're kind of waiting for some Doctor Who, just hang in there. We only have this episode and another one to talk about. Directed by Ashley Way. And this was the first episode from Series 2 in 2008. And so it's just kind of a general take on this. What was your reaction to this episode?
I always worry I'm going to step on your topics, but
that's all right. Well, I'll let you know.
I love this episode for a lot of reasons. One, they did not ignore the fact that Jack had been gone.
Right.
We know as Doctor Who fans where he was.
Right.
And the adventures he had.
Yeah, because this obviously set up, that little trilogy during Series 3, where that began with Utopia and then continued with The Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords.
Yeah.
Which featured John Sims Master,
Yes.
but also featured Captain Jack as he kind of has like another adventure with the Doctor and his current companion at the time, Martha Jones.
Yes, and
who ends up becoming a member of Torchwood as a result of their interaction and their meeting.
Yeah, and then what I especially love about this episode,
right,
is a certain guest star. And
yes.
I know we're going to talk about him more,
right.
But there are times, and I don't know about you, Charles, but there are times when you are a fan of a athlete.
Yes.
So even though he may change teams, you're still a fan of that person.
Yes.
And you root for that.
Well, with actors, it's easy because you follow the actor, not the character.
Right.
Generally.
And to have someone from Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
yes.
a absolutely wonderful show,
right.
to see them show a diversity and play a different character just made me so happy.
Yes, no, you're obviously talking about James Marsters, who plays Captain John Hart in this story, and obviously his most notable role is as the vampire Spike on both Buffy the Vampire Slayer and its spin-off series, Angel.
Yes.
So that's where he's primarily known. But if you're a James Marsters fan, you also know that he was notable for playing the supervillain Brainiac on Smallville.
Yes.
And also he's currently playing the character Victor Stein on Runaways, the Hulu series based off the Marvel Comics.
You know, I have not watched that series yet.
I recommend it. It's actually very, very good, and it's better than you would think it would be.
Okay, good. I'll have to check that out.
I don't know if you've checked out Marvel's Cloak and Dagger on Freeform.
I have them recorded. I just haven't got to them yet. Please
I think they're
good.
They're both good, and I think they're both very similar in tone. So much so, I think they should do a crossover. Personally.
Okay, very nice.
So yeah, but if you enjoy one, I think you'll definitely enjoy the other.
Okay, great.
Or vice versa. So yeah, obviously we have a lot to talk about as always, and we have a lot of feedback to catch up on because hey, our posting is sort of caught up a little bit.
We did, yes.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of old feedback to catch up on. So let's dive right into our main topics. And unless you had anything else before we get into the main discussion.
No, not at all. I did want to no, I'll save this for later.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about topic number 1. And this is a more obscure theme this week.
All right, I'm looking forward to catch it.
So if you don't get it right away, I'll explain it when I get to the third topic. So just be patient with me. So first topic, go fish. And
okay.
This, of course, I want to talk about the Torchwood team first, as in the other, with Gwen, Owen, Ianto, and and of course Toshiko, Tosh, they're kind of filling in for Jack while he decides to go like hopping TARDISes, and they're actually become rather effective and rather efficient without him around. And we get a great opening sequence where we have the Torchwood team pursuing this blowfish alien. The alien looks like with a head for a blowfish for a head, who's kind of like racing through the streets of Cardiff at night in a red Chrysler Crossfire. And I want to get your thoughts on that.
A great line.
Yeah.
First off, the lady walking across the street,
the old lady,
very
yes.
slow, and then
the old lady steals that scene as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, she does, and then the alien
with
just staring
Torchwood.
at her. Yes, I have a little bit of problem with that line because I don't think she should know who Torchwood is. But
but remember, they drive around with their the words Torchwood on the side of their truck, and they
okay,
have
fair
big
enough.
flashing lights. So
Okay.
for a secret agency, they're
Yeah.
not very secret.
But
And it was funny.
There was so much humor when the van pulls up after the sports car drove
Right.
away.
Right.
Have you seen a blowfish driving a sports car?
Yeah.
I just love the beginning of that.
And she kind of just points that way.
That away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to see the team again. There is a little bit of bickering because it is Torchwood,
Right.
but they seem to be being very effective. And
remember in the last episode that we talked about here on Next Stop Everywhere, where we talked about End of Days, they were very dysfunctional.
They were.
They were not getting along, and Jack's gone, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, hey, we've figured out how to work together, and we're actually pretty good at it.
Yeah, and
under Gwen's leadership.
Yes, and I like the interactions between them. I think everyone has their role. I think they're working together. There is some resentment. There is a point where Jack would know what to do. Well, he's not here.
Right.
And
Ianto is a field agent now. He's not just getting coffee, which I liked.
Yeah, I did too. So, yeah, it's great to see them interacting. There's been as Torchwood continues, there is changes in the core Scooby gang, to use a Buffy and Scooby, Scooby-Doo reference. But these four plus Jack were my favorite. I just love this group and the interaction.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of funny that the blowfish doesn't just blow through the stop sign.
Yeah.
He pauses at the crosswalk, and he's kind of waiting for the old lady to cross. He's like, come on. And he's just revving his engines.
Yes.
And just come on, hurry up. And then once she crosses, then he races on forward, which I thought was interesting. It's okay, he's willing to just, kill people, kill a hostage, but he makes time for this old lady to cross the street. I thought it was funny.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And then, of course, this leads to a house where, a place where he gets that hostage, and the blowfish is taunting them right and left, just calling them out, almost kind of like Jack did in End of Days. Hey, the coffee boy who got a promotion, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then that, of course, leads to Jack returning, and who takes out the blowfish. So that leads, of course, that's going to lead us right into our second topic, homecoming.
Okay.
So we have Go Fish and Homecoming.
Okay, I'm thinking.
I made this hopefully a bit of a mystery here. So.
Okay, I like it.
All right, but it does have a relevant to this episode.
Okay.
So I'll just say that. And this, of course, is Jack, who's back from his adventures in, what is it, the year, I forget, what is it, 100 trillion. It'd be fun. It's kind of interesting how he just lands on that even year of 100 trillion. But, or they just stop, being specific after a certain point. Who knows? And now, so he just shows up. No warning. No hey guys, I'm back. It just shows up and takes out this blowfish. And, I want to get your thoughts on him trying to kind of work his way back into this team, even though the team seems to be just getting along just fine without him. And, of course, that ultimately his secrets that are starting to come out when Captain John Hart shows up. I want to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, a lot of peeling the mystery.
Yeah.
There is that is a great entrance line.
Yep.
It
hey kids, did you miss me?
Yeah. And just like in, is it season 6 of Buffy where Giles comes back and has that great return line?
I'm not sure. I think so.
Yeah.
It seems like that might be it.
Yeah.
Five or six.
Yeah. And so I think that was awesome. You knew Jack was going to come back pretty quick.
Right.
So to have him come in that dramatic way was just awesome. Just a great answer of and kind of there he is. So I was very happy to see that. And
but the team
reaction,
is the team is very cold toward him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're very mad.
Especially Gwen, who's feeling a little hurt and betrayed that he left all of a sudden.
Yeah. And by the way, yes, it was season 5, 2 to go.
Okay.
Willow says there's no one in the world who has the power to stop me now, and Giles shows up. I'd like to test that theory, which is one of the Rupert Giles. Yes, one of the great entrance lines. And I thought of that hearing Jack. Hey kids, miss me? Just perfect.
Yeah, Rupert Giles, one of my favorite characters on Buffy. And it even turned up in the Doctor Who episode.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. So what did you think about the group's reaction to Jack? I mean, do you think it was justified?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Do you think, because the way he had treated them, especially right before he died,
and then to disappear.
Yeah.
Gone. Don't know what's happening. They're right to be upset. They're right to be concerned.
Right.
And they were scared. They were worried. They felt abandoned. And him to come back kind of, what? Me?
Yeah. What do you guys all, hey, I just, what are you upset with me for? I didn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, one thing I did notice while I was doing this rewatch, Jack kind of manipulates his way back into the group. He kind of works on Iento. He's just like, hey, you want to go out for a date? And he works on Gwen.
Yeah.
And just kind of like tries to get all like, kind of playing on her feelings about him.
Right. He says, I came back for you.
Right.
Then he says, all of you. And I didn't
that was something I didn't notice the first time.
No, and I didn't like that at all. I remember not liking it when I originally watched because I'm a big fan of, Reese because he's such a good boyfriend, fiance, husband. I mean, he is not the nagging or why are you working so much? He's totally supportive. And to have Jack kind of flirting with her bothered me because I do not ship them together. I guess that's my problem.
And even when Gwen kind of waves her ring finger and goes, yeah, hey, like Jack kind of like caresses her hand, and then he's kind of notices the ring, and she lifts up her hand and reveals that engagement ring.
Yes.
And so she's kind of like, yeah, hey, I moved on because someone wasn't around.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought that was interesting. Now, we're going to talk about Captain John Hart here in a minute, obviously. Okay. But I want to get your thoughts on the way Jack, all of a sudden, he's just wormed his way back into the Torchwood team. And then all of a sudden, Captain John Hart shows up, and everything's all like the table gets upended again.
Yeah.
And he kind of has to scramble a little bit, and automatically the distrust comes right back from the team.
Well,
because it's another secret that, hey, who's this guy? Why haven't you told us about this guy?
And there is a lot of...
What's a time agent?
Yeah, what's a time agent? What's going on? I don't understand. They are confused. What are you talking about? Where have you been? Why are you here? Why aren't you? Who is this strange guy coming in?
Yeah.
That seems to know you so well. I like it.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to our third topic as we kind of breeze through these. But again, I did say we did have a lot of mail to catch up on.
Absolutely.
So obviously, I want to talk about Captain John Hart here with conversations with dead people.
Okay, so that was the giveaway. These
That's
are
what I was hoping for.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer titles.
Ding, ding,
Episode
ding, ding,
titles.
ding, ding.
Yes.
So you figured out the theme. Well done.
Yes.
There.
Well done.
Obviously, in honor of James Marsters, who
Yes.
played Spike. So I'm glad you figured that out. That was good.
Yeah.
I tried to make that one a little obvious.
No, that was perfect. First off, I love this character. In fact, I loved it so much when James was going to be at a convention in Houston.
Yes.
I had Tom do a sketch of him.
Tom Zoller, the guy who created our Next Stop Everywhere logo.
So he created a sketch of him as John Hart.
Right.
And so James signed it and actually said, "Nice." He was really happy that, because as most people are, because obviously he is beloved as Spike.
Right, I'm sure he was glad for the change.
Yeah.
That somebody recognized one of his other characters.
Yeah, and so he did. He went to Jesse Nice and signed it. And Tom drew him in his the costume, the uniform he's wearing in this show. I'll tweet out the photo once the episode's out.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of that costume, because I really liked it because for one thing, it's a nod to Adam Ant.
Yes.
Adam Ant, one of the '80s singers, he had that jacket for one of his performance costumes that he wore on album covers and whatnot, and he became a little iconic as a result of it. And it was kind of interesting to see John Hart wearing that.
Yes.
Similar jacket.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it. I love the scene where he's in the bar. You go, stay. Oh, you definitely stay. Just dismissing everyone.
Yeah, and there were very few actors which can upstage John Barrowman and steal a scene, but apparently James Marsters as Captain John Hart is one of them.
Yeah,
because he just as soon as he came in, just completely stole every scene he was in.
Yeah.
Even though he's the bad guy, and just because of his relationship with Jack, and having that kind of 51st century omnisexual or just attitude.
Yes.
That he just makes for such a great character, and Marsters plays him for all he's worth. Everything that we loved about Spike, he throws right into Captain John Hart as well.
It was, though, I love the idea that they kiss and then they hit each other. There is that fine line between love and hate.
Right.
It is very clear they have a past. You know that immediately.
Right.
So I just thought it was awesome. I just a great character. At the end where he goes, "Hey, are you needing a, teammate?" And go. And then we have that great, final line. Oh yeah, by the way, and shared that.
He drops as he's leaving, he drops this bomb on Jack, like, "Oh hey, remember what's his name? Gray."
Yeah.
He's like, "Remember Gray? Well, hey, I found him."
Yeah.
And Jack Slitz is like, "What?
What? Yeah. So, it was a good episode anyway. But his appearance, I think that is one of the reasons why.
Right.
I think you and I both have such a high feeling about this episode because it gets you back into the groove of Torchwood. They're showing everything. I just love it.
Yeah, it was just a great way to bring back the season. Now, now John Hart turns out, he essentially takes out the entire Torchwood team except for Jack. Well, actually, he even takes out Jack because he pushes Jack off of a rooftop. He's really good at pushing people off rooftops, as it turns out.
Yes, he is.
And Jack ends up in this really gruesome shot where he falls backwards against a bench, and his body folds backwards. Like his spinal column, instead of falling forwards, he falls backwards. So his body is bent backwards over the hump of the bench. And Captain John Hart just is like, well, obviously he's dead.
Yeah.
Because a little hard to come back from that. Well, guess what? Jack, of course, shows up later and surprises Captain John Hart. And I thought that was rather amusing.
Yeah, in fact, as he talks about, I can't die.
Right.
And though I think we've established, right, it hurts every time he dies.
Yeah, it's not like he doesn't feel pain.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Wolverine. Like he feels the pain.
Right.
But he comes back from it. He's just so accustomed to it.
Yeah.
As much as you can be, I guess.
Absolutely.
And then he ends up like, he gets a hold of Gwen and locks her in a storage container.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to go through this whole process of trying to track her down.
After he uses the knockout psychedelic, lipstick, lip gloss.
Yeah, I'm guessing he and River Song shop at the same cosmetic store.
I think they do, yes.
Because remember, River had that too as well. So,
yes.
Yeah, that kind of knockout lipstick or a lip balm or whatever it is. So I thought that was good. And then, of course, with that revelation about Gray, everybody's just like, okay, Jack, who's Gray?
Mm-hmm.
And then he's just like, oh, it's nothing. Let's get back to work.
Yeah.
And everybody's just like, yeah, right, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty funny.
Yes, very.
But I love James Marsters' performance in this. I thought, once I heard that he was going to be on Torchwood, obviously being a Buffy fan, an Angel fan, that I thought, well, that's perfect. He's going to be great. And sure enough, he was. He totally lived up to expectations on this, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And, so very interesting episode. So anything else about this episode before we move on?
No.
I know we're rushing through this a little quickly.
No. I understand. Just go enjoy it. It is, I will warn you though, just like potato chips, you can't just eat one.
Right.
I was very tempted to just binge the whole season.
Well, there's nothing stopping you from doing so.
Just all the other shows I need to watch on my DVR.
Yeah, like Cloak and Dagger and Runaways.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. Great stuff, and I really enjoyed this. And obviously, we're going to talk about more in our feedback. So we have some feedback on that. All right. So, do you have favorite lines of the episode? There are a lot of good lines in this.
There are a lot of good lines. When John leaves a message.
Yes.
It says, and it's via hologram, which is important.
Yeah, Jack's wrist comes.
Yeah. I can't believe I got the answering machine. What could you be doing that's more important than me? Anyway, you're probably traced the energy shift, found the body. All me. Sorry about the mess. Bill me for the cleanup. Now, drinks. Retrolog the transmission coordinates. That's where I am, and hurry up. Work to do. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
I had a feeling you'd want to go for that quote.
It's just perfect.
Yeah.
There is so much smarminess.
Yeah.
And of course, Buffy was known for cultural references and quick quips. Normally Doctor Who kind of tries to stay timeless.
Right.
They don't do modern pop culture. Most of their quips are history because that's very appropriate for the show.
Yeah.
So I just love that one because it fit. It perfect so well.
Yeah. Well, the Star Wars quotes have almost become timeless because it's such such a popular pop culture item. I mean, just that it's so predominant.
Yes.
That they've almost taken on a form that, well, as long as it's not set before 1977, you can get away with a Star Wars reference rather easily.
All right.
So I like this one exchange between Gwen and Owen early on when they're kind of racing through the streets.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Bruce Springsteen reference.
I see what you did there.
No, it's what you did.
I see.
All
All
right.
right. So Gwen tells Owen, she's kind of coming down on him a little bit, as Gwen does. All I'm saying is, you are speeding, and there are children. And Owen replies, well, if the kids are out at midnight, they've got it coming.
Yeah, that I thought of that one. I love that.
That is very Owen. So that's a very Owen response. I like that a lot.
Yes. Another perfect, the smugness when Gwen
Yes.
says, you are unbelievable. And Captain John, and yet you still find me strangely attractive.
Well, I'm thinking we're finding we have the same quotes because you just took two of my quotes.
Okay.
So I do have one more.
Okay.
All right, and this is an exchange between Captain Jack Gwen and Captain John Hart, where Captain Jack is warning Gwen about Captain John Hart. He says 3 rules. 1, don't believe anything he says. 2, always keep him in front of you. And 3, under no circumstances let him kiss you. And Gwen Cooper replies, as if I would. And then Captain John Hart, who kind of is off to the corner, yells over and says, has he got to the no kissing rule yet? He only invented that one because he wants me all to himself.
Yes. And then the last one I had is Gwen is pulling John toward the rift. We have to go. And John says, whoa, what about a last-minute rescue? What's the point of being on a team if you don't get a last-minute rescue?
Nice.
Which remind me of the Doctor, right? What's the point of me being brilliant if you're not here to watch?
Exactly.
Yes.
Well spotted.
Yes. Cool.
All right, any other quotes?
No.
Okay, so what's your rating for this one?
I give this 9.5 sports cars stopping at a red light. This is so much fun. This is what just a great way to start the new series, and it reminds you everything that you love about Torchwood. So great.
Nice. Okay. Well, I was going to go with 9 blowfishes in a sports car, but instead I'll go with 9 risk communicators.
What's funny is we are really in sync this time.
That's good.
Yeah, it is good. Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So it shows you how much we really like this episode. This is
absolutely
such a strong episode. And again, it's my favorite single episode.
Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely.
Yeah, Children of Earth is my favorite overall story.
Yes.
But this is my favorite single episode. So kudos to Chibnall on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it a lot. Going to reverse the polarity. Do you have a reverse the polarity?
I do
choice?
not.
Okay.
Please.
Well, kind of following up on our last episode, I think I'm going to go ahead and reverse the polarity this week to 2007 for the Doctor Who episode Utopia, which we talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah,
the 11th episode of Series 3 in 2007, written by Russell T. Davies. And this is the episode, of course, where Jack jumps on the TARDIS. So if you're kind of wanting to kind of fill in the gaps between End of Days and this episode, Utopia is obviously the great place to start. And then continue on, of course, with the Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords. But This episode, Utopia. So the TARDIS lands in Cardiff to refuel from the Cardiff rift. And the 10th Doctor states this will only take 20 seconds, noting that the rift has been active recently. Yeah, I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
And the Doctor is looking at the monitor and sees Captain Jack Harkness racing toward the TARDIS, so he quickly dematerializes. But Jack grabs onto the exterior, causing the TARDIS to fly to the end of the universe, trying to shake him off. And upon arrival in the year 100 trillion, Martha discovers Jack's dead. Jack's dead, baby. Jack's dead. And several seconds later, of course, he revives, introduces himself to Martha, and he tells them he wanted to find the Doctor, so he returned to Earth using a vortex manipulator, but was stranded in the 19th century. which is the story we got in Captain Jack Harkness
Yes.
on Torchwood. So Jack decided to base himself at the Cardiff Rift and waited, knowing the Doctor would eventually land there to refuel.
Right.
So this is why this was his plan, why he set up Torchwood at Cardiff to oversee the Rift, because he was hoping that eventually the Doctor would have to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as they end up exploring the planet, they find an abandoned city with a lone human running for his life from the future kind, these cannibalistic humanoids that are attempting to eat him.
Yes.
And he's attempting to get to a nearby missile silo to get transport to Utopia, hence the episode title, the last hope for the human race. So the Doctor, Jack, and Martha help the man reach the silo, where they meet the elderly Professor Yana and his insectoid assistant Chantho.
Right.
And the professor asks the Doctor to look at their rocket engine to determine why it won't launch, and the Doctor helps him repair it. But during the repairs, the professor keeps hearing this rhythmic drum beat in his head, dun, 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 dun. And of course, he ends up getting distracted. Now, when the rocket's ready to launch, all the survivors go inside, and the Doctor uses his TARDIS to help power up the engines, kind of like a jump start, essentially.
Yeah.
And while Jack's inside working, the Doctor admits to Jack that he abandoned him purposely on Satellite 5 in the Parting of the Ways because of Jack's immortality, which kind of freaked him out, essentially. So we get a nice little explanation about why he left Jack behind.
Exactly.
They end up discussing the Doctor's newest regeneration, and then Professor Yana begins to hear the drumbeat in his head louder and louder. The launch sequence starts, and as Martha goes to check on Professor Yana, she's terrified to see that he possesses a fob watch identical to the one the Doctor possessed in Human Nature / The Family of Blood. Yeah, that fob watch. She intentionally draws the professor's attention to the watch, overriding its perception filter, and the professor is suddenly overcome by voices coming from the watch. Uh-oh. So the Doctor initiates the rocket's launch sequence at the same time that the professor opens the fob watch. Guess what? He's the master. And after Chantho ends up threatening him with a gun, the master attacks her with a live electric cable, but she manages to shoot him before she dies. The master stumbles into the Doctor's TARDIS and deadlocks the doors, dying from Chantho's shot. The master declares he will be young and strong like the Doctor and proceeds to regenerate. And the newly regenerated John Sim master taunts the Doctor over the intercom in a voice that, guess what, Martha recognizes from Earth. And the master dematerializes the TARDIS, but the Doctor uses a sonic screwdriver to lock the TARDIS coordinates between there and the last place it visited on Earth. So the episode ends in a cliffhanger as the TARDIS disappears, straining the Doctor, Jack, and Martha with the future kind about to break through the door.
Yes.
Great episode.
Oh, perfect.
So if you're kind of in the mood to get a little more backstory about what happened to Jack, obviously this trilogy, this episode in particular, good place to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Cool. We have tons of feedback.
Yeah, we have tons of feedback. So yeah, let's go ahead and do our feedback here. Let's see. Let's go back to June 14th. Yes, I've saved all these emails. So to Paul from Australia, who wrote in about our podcast award and also the Torchwood episode End of Days. So we're catching up on that.
Right.
So Paul writes in, "Hi, Charles and Jesse. I have to start by wishing you both congratulations for winning the Indie PopCon Podcast Award for Best Sci-Fi Fantasy Podcast. An honor well deserved." Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
We definitely appreciate it. And we couldn't do it without listeners like you. So
yes.
As far as the Torchwood episode, I've got to say I really like this episode. Don't get me wrong, it has some good stuff in it, but to me, it seemed very rushed to tie story threads together from that first season. I will start with the things I did like, and the first off is Eva, who acts the hell out of some scenes, most notably when Reese, I think she means Eve Miles,
Yes.
Yeah, so Eve Miles went in. Most notably when Reese is stabbed and murdered by Billis. She is so ripped apart and totally believable. John Barrowman also does some great acting, as does the rest of the cast. I also like the character of Billis. He is one creepy time-traveling dude. Very intriguing. I feel like I want to know more about him and how he became linked to Abaddon. Yeah, we never got a good backstory for Billis, did we?
No, we didn't.
Maybe in one of the Big Finish audios. I also enjoy the returning characters from earlier in the season that appeared to Torchwood Gang, each telling you that the rift needs to be open. What I didn't like about the episode is that a couple things. First is how fast the team turns on Jack to the point where Owen shoots him so they can open the rift. And later when Jack comes back to life, he seems to forgive them all very fast. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that. I would have been a bit annoyed at them. As for ending with Abaddon, that plot thread happened so fast, so this is a creature imprisoned under the rift so that it can be let out by opening it, which happens. And then we get this Godzilla scene with him striding across Cardiff only to feast on Jack and die. Then everything magically resets? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Why? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Please explain, and what happened to Billis?
Yeah.
We have no idea what happened to Billis.
No,
it's
we
not
do
told
not.
to us. It's not told to us. And a lot of kind of loose threads here, which is kind of why we only, didn't give it as high as we obviously gave this episode.
Absolutely.
Kiss, kiss, bang, bang. Okay, aside from the nitpicking, I do like the ending with the familiar sound of the TARDIS and Captain Jack is gone, leaving his team to wonder. Anyway, I remember when I first watched this episode many years ago, I was still wanting to see more of Torchwood, even though this episode frustrated me a little. Sending you both my kindest regards, Paul. P.S. I've calmed down now that I got that off my chest, and I'm looking forward to another episode.
Yay.
Yes. Paul writes the longest letters sometimes. Boy.
Absolutely.
All right, but they're all great.
Yes.
So,
do you want me to read Holly's? I have them up.
Now, this is one that was on my birthday, June 16th.
Oh, okay, yes.
You have that one?
I do.
Okay.
Hi, guys. Enjoyed your episode on day one. I totally agree with you about Miracle Day. There were promises there, but the execution wasn't. I also second the Big Finish Torchwood audio series. Great stuff to listen to. I'm just finishing up the second series of the audio adventures and have enjoyed them greatly. Now on to the main review, End of Days. Owen opening the rift to save Jack and Tosh from the adventures in the 1940s last episode, Captain Jack Harkness, is having some major consequences for both the world and Team Torchwood itself. Loving the character of PC Andy, and I'm so glad that he's around in later adventures. We also get a quick glimpse of the 10th Doctor's hand that was cut off during the Christmas invasion. Poor Reese getting tased by Gwen for his own good. Also, Gwen having to decide how much to tell Reese, as well as along with making sure that he stays alive for a long time to come. The last 10 minutes of the episode are like a roller coaster of emotion, with Gwen wanting to save Reese and Owen shooting Jack, and then Jack's sacrifice, and then him running off to find the Doctor at the end of the episode. Good stuff. The character of Billis
yeah,
has always intrigued me. He does come back in a Torchwood novel by the name of Twilight Streets.
Oh, there you go.
And also an upcoming Torchwood Big Finish adventures called Deadbeat Escape. Can't wait to hear what's up for review next.
All right.
Holly from Wisconsin.
Thanks, Holly. We're going to have to check out some of those Torchwood audios.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that. Good stuff.
All right. So let's see here. I'm going to go now with Holly again, who wrote in just 3 days ago.
Yes.
So this is more current on Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So she writes in, congratulations on the award for the podcast. So thanks, Holly. We're very proud of it, too.
Yes, we are.
And, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, one of my favorite Torchwood episodes. Love the comedic elements in the opening sequence, and of course James Marsters as Captain John Hart. The snark between Jack with John and even John with Gwen was just the right touch.
I agree.
If you want more with Captain John, I recommend yet again the Big Finish Torchwood line and the story called The Death of Captain Jack.
Ooh.
So they got two good recommendations there
okay.
on Big Finish. full of hijinks between the captains. I'll wrap it up here and look forward to what episode we'll be reviewing next.
Yay.
So that's a perfect segue, Holly, because, but first we want to let everybody know that if you want to get a hold of us, just like Paul and Holly did, you can reach us on the Gmail at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. And you can also reach us on Facebook at Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. And normally you'd be able to reach us on the Twitter machine at NextStopSMG, but Twitter, in their infinite wisdom, apparently changed some of the code in Twitter so that if you had a birth date that was, like for a podcast that was only 4 years old, apparently they consider you too young to use Twitter, and therefore they locked us out.
Oh, wow.
And I've been fighting with Twitter for a week to try to get a response. I emailed them and submitted a, help request. That was on a week ago Friday. Nothing from Twitter. They have completely ghosted. And apparently they've ghosted a lot of people. If you go to their account at Twitter support, they have a statement that they put out on the 12th that, hey, we realize there's a problem because apparently they've done this to lots of people. And that's it. They had we'll get back to you when we have a resolution. Well, as of today, hey, it's June 24th, 12 days later, no sign, no comments from Twitter at Twitter support. So no response to my request and no response to everybody else at Twitter support.
I wondered why.
So if you're trying to reach us there on Twitter, you're wondering what's going on, that's what's going on. So my apologies, but this is Twitter's fault.
I went this morning to tweet like I often do. Hey, Charles and I are going to be talking.
Right.
And at Next Stop SMG didn't come up.
It doesn't have a link because, they locked it. They basically said, okay, this page does not exist.
Wow.
Yeah, so Twitter's being jerks. So if you want to reach us on Twitter, I recommend reaching me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter and, of course, at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. In the meantime, hopefully we'll get this worked out.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to lose all the followers we got.
Absolutely.
But, so our apologies for the technical difficulties, but this one's on Twitter, and it's really kind of annoying me, as you can probably tell in my voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Irritating.
And I'm sure you're annoyed as well. So if you want to, Jesse, if you want to send them a thing as well, maybe try to.
I just did. I just tweeted that.
So
hey, what's up? Yeah.
So apparently, don't change your date to if it's for a podcast or some other thing. Don't make it under. I think it was 13 years old or something that you can't. Because they'll just lock you right out and won't even give you the chance to change the date.
Yeah,
so,
I wonder.
They shut you down hard and fast, and you're kind of screwed over if you have that problem.
I wonder if I guess I didn't put a date on Set Listing Bruce.
Right.
It's still there.
Yeah.
But that makes sense.
Don't change it. Do not
absolutely.
Gosh. Yeah, don't. I mean, unless it's dated recently, like this year, I wouldn't do it.
I put my birthday on it. So, okay. So
there you go. That's
why.
probably,
okay.
That helps. So just a little warning to everybody out there. And so you don't have the same problem we do. We'll try and get this worked out as fast as we can. But apart from that fun business, Jesse, where can they reach you on the interwebs?
I can be reached at, as you said, Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. You can hear me talk about music on Set Listing Bruce here on this fine podcast network. And coming up this summer, I have been asked to guest host a week of episodes for Rocking the Suburbs.
Nice.
So I'm kind of excited about that. I I feel
Now,
like
what's that podcast about?
Rocking the Suburbs is Jim and Patrick used to work for USA Today.
Yeah.
One of them still does, and they did a dad rock podcast where
Okay.
they talked about rock that dads listen to. And
Okay.
they didn't just talk classic rock, they talk all kinds of rock and music. And Jim and Patrick take the summer, they take a vacation, and last summer they had a couple people fill in, kind of like back in the days when Jay Leno or Joan Rivers or people would fill in for Johnny Carson.
Right.
References no one in our audience is getting. So they.
I don't know. There are probably a couple
Yeah.
of
So,
our generation out there.
Yeah. So on their Facebook page, they asked if anyone was interested, and I said yes. So I have coming up this summer, not sure when we do, I'll let you guys know, where I'm going to be hosting a week worth of episodes on their podcast. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Yeah, please do, because that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I like to check that out.
Absolutely. And where can we hear your fine work?
Okay. You don't want to talk about how to reach you on the Twitter machine and all that, or
I thought I already had.
Jesse
Jackson, DFW.
Yeah, I did mention that. You're right.
Yes.
You're right.
And
okay.
At
your other podcast, Set Lusting Brews.
Yes. And so yeah.
All right. So as for me,
yes.
You can reach me, like I said, at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine. If you want to drop us a line, just contact either one of us if you want to get a hold of us for Next Stop Everywhere there. But Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Columbus, Ohio, Hilliard, Ohio. And Google Plus for all you crazy kids of the Google Plus. Shout out to Karen, who I want to talk about in a minute. And, of course, my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the shows that we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere. Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, and all kinds of comic book sci-fi news and news about the other podcasts they do for Southgate Media Group, including, this award-winning podcast, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. We talk about Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast they do with Zan Sprouse, and the Phantom Zone podcast they do with Karen Lindsay, and Titan Talk, the Titans podcast that I do with you, Jesse. And we need to talk about a Titan Talk episode. We haven't talked about that for a couple months now.
Do.
So
do we have a date yet when the show's going to start coming out?
We're expected. I think the date's going to get announced here at San Diego Comic-Con in July, but I would imagine it's going to be sometime in September.
Okay, very nice. Yes.
So yeah, stay, because that's when the network is going to go up. So
absolutely,
very soon, I think. Definitely look at those other podcasts. Please, we really appreciate all the love that you give us on those podcasts as well as Next Stop Everywhere. And if you want to help us out, please review us on iTunes at Next Stop Everywhere, because that obviously helps people find us. And also support the Southgate Media Patreon page, because that helps keep the Next Stop Everywhere lights on, keeps our TARDIS engines humming along nicely.
Yes.
And I'm sure Rob Southgate would appreciate that as well.
Absolutely.
So what I want to talk about with Karen real quick before we sign off, Karen has expressed an interest to me, and I want to run this past you, Jesse.
Okay.
Now that I'm thinking about it, that she'd like to join us when we start reviewing the Jodie Whittaker episodes.
Ah, okay.
Because she thinks it might be a good idea if, hey, she brings a little estrogen to all this testosterone that we have here on Next Stop Everywhere. So I wanted to run that past you and see what you thought of it. So you want to think that over. I don't want to commit you to an answer just yet.
Yeah, Karen is always I'm always open to having Karen. The
right.
podcast mom is one of my favorite people. I think that would be really great for a special, kind of a different perspective of Jodie.
Right.
I think that's great.
Yeah, and I know that one of our listeners, Stephanie Marie Freiney, I hope I got that name right. Apologies if I didn't. But she expressed an interest on guest hosting while we were kind of lost in time and space thanks to, our posting.
Yeah.
But so, Stephanie, if you're serious about that, we'd love to have you on Next Stop Everywhere as well. because we're always looking for good guest hosts, and I'm sure you'd be just fine.
Absolutely, and I would, as we get closer, I think it would be very interesting to, and not that we're shouting out.
Go ahead and shout out.
Shutting out or not giving a voice to Doctor Who male fans, but I think it'd be interesting for us to do an episode where we have a couple of female co-hosts to talk to us what that means to them and to share. I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Because the Doctor Who at its best is when Doctor Who is about inclusion.
Yes.
And we don't want to be like those Star Wars fans that have kind of soiled the reputation of Star Wars fans lately.
Yes, absolutely.
We want to be inclusive, not exclusive here.
I agree.
And the Doctor Who is all about change, and we want to support the positive aspects of that. So yeah, I think getting another perspective that's not all our dudeness, as Karen kind of described it.
Yes.
Might be a good idea.
And before anyone says anything, I'm going to throw it out there. Absolutely, Charles and I could talk about the show. We don't have to have a woman's perspective.
Right.
We want to have a woman's perspective. We want to have Karen join us.
Exactly. We could obviously just go right along and do our podcast as normal, but we're just looking to change things up, keep things fresh.
Absolutely.
And also kind of like maybe approach things from a different perspective we as dudes may not always consider.
Absolutely.
And nothing wrong with that as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Good.
All right. So looking forward to that, and I will let Karen know that you're down with the idea.
Absolutely.
All right. So obviously people have listened to Karen before here on Next Stop Everywhere, so it's not like she's a stranger either.
Yes, and Karen and I are both mourning the official cancellation of Timeless.
Yes, I as a Constantine fan, I sympathize with you because, hey, NBC screwed us over quite well too there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I'm not surprised by this. I hate to say, but NBC being NBC, that's my sympathies toward you as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So without any further ado, we'll wrap this up. Thanks everybody for listening. Next Stop Everywhere. Oh,
next
we have
week.
a quote. Oh yeah.
Yes, we have a quote. And what next week? What are we talking about?
Thank you, Jesse, for keeping me straight. Yeah, we want to know what you're going to talk about. We're going to talk about next time, right?
Right.
So we're going to talk about exit wounds.
Ah, nice.
This is the 13th episode from Torchwood Season 2, so the Season 2 finale. And this would be a good place to kind of wrap up our Chibnall retrospective. And this is also, again, written by Chibnall. And, there's a lot going on in this episode.
Good.
So this is the last regular episode of Torchwood before they switch to the kind of limited series format with Children of Earth. So I want to get your thoughts on that, and then we'll get back to some Doctor Who.
Awesome.
So let's do that. So we'll do that next time. And Jesse, do we have a quote going out?
Yes, we do. As you guys can tell, over the past few episodes, my heart has been heavy. We stay out of politics on this podcast, but I wanted to end with an actual Torchwood quote. This is from Gwen.
Okay.
There's one thing I've always wanted to ask Jack. Back in the old days, I wanted to know about that doctor of his, the man who appears out of nowhere and saves the world. Except sometimes he doesn't. All those times in history where there was no sign of him. I wanted to know why not. But I don't need to ask anymore. I know the answer now. Sometimes the doctor must look at this planet and turn away in shame. I'm recording this in case anyone ever finds it so you can see how the world ended.
Ooh. Rather dark.
Yes.
What episode was that from?
That is from Miracle Day. From Children of Earth.
Children of
Day
Earth.
4th, yes.
I thought that sounded familiar. Okay.
Yeah, so yes.
All right. Awesome quote. All right. Wow, you just okay, we just killed the momentum.
Well, the news is disturbing me. And
and that's understandable.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
let's try and be hopeful and optimistic.
Absolutely, because that's what Doctor Who is about.
Exactly. So we want to get out of the darkness. So let's
Absolutely.
let's try to get to bring humanity together and hopefully lift ourselves out of the darkness.
Absolutely.
How's that?
We're going to
All
keep
right.
hope alive.
Keep hope.
Charles, take us out.
Hey, that's a great slogan. Keep hope alive. I like that slogan. Yes, one of your standbys. So thanks everybody for listening to the Next Stop Everywhere, and come back for Exit Wounds. I think it's going to be good. So we'll see you next time right here at Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Bye, everybody.